Hi, and welcome to the Existential Delight podcast. My name is Dylan, and the following is a conversation with a good friend of mine, David Patrick Harry. He's the creator of the Church of the Eternal Logos YouTube channel, and he is very much a friend. It's very much a conversation between friends, and this is actually the second time he's on the podcast. He was one of the first episodes, and I really wanted to chat to him again. And I've been on his show a few times, and I think it's an interesting conversation. We talk for quite a while, over 2 hours, and we discuss Christianity, obviously, and we also talk about transhumanism. We talk about paradox. We talk about humility. We talk about the online Catholic and Orthodox debate. He is, of course, Orthodox. I'm Catholic. So that was a fun part of the conversation and my personal favorite part of the conversation. We also talk about YouTube and creating content and what that process is like and how we do it. And I think if you're beginning on YouTube or you're kind of starting to create content on YouTube, I think you'll find that part of the conversation very interesting and likely very helpful. We also talk about many more things than just what I've listed. I think this is an alternate title for this episode might be Two Prolific Ramblers Meet, because both Patrick and I are very good at rambling, as you will see in the conversation. Very much a conversation between friends. If you enjoy this video, please consider giving it a like. And if you're new here and you'd like to get more videos like this, more episodes of the podcast, you want to watch more, there's plenty more episodes. There's lots of videos on my channel exploring the work of G.K. Chesterton, as well as music analyses, film analyses, and all host of other things. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did. And without further ado, here's my conversation with David Patrick Harry.
Yeah, even my academic research since the last time we talked actually has nothing to do with what the heck? Oh, sorry. I was trying to the heart was flashing. I thought I needed to click on it to turn it off.
No worries.
Yeah.
At least that didn't happen.
But yeah, it has nothing to do with psychedelics anymore. And I did a whole series of presentations for like my PhD committee. And they're really more interested in I wrote a little bit on how it leads into transhumanism. And so now it's basically been me reading everything I can get my hands on in regards to technology, technocracy, transhumanism, and arguing for it as a new religious movement and sort of tracing the history of magic, alchemy, and these sort of presuppositions of divinizing ourselves through our own technological extensions, our own magical abilities. And so I just been ferociously reading anything I can about technology, the religion of technology, transhumanism, stuff like that. So even what it's still related because it goes back to drugs, it gets back to psychedelics, it gets back to magic and all this different stuff, but totally a different focus. So that's basically been my focus since April of last year.
Wow. What is so you mentioned there briefly our magical abilities. Maybe we could just start with that, because I'm kind of just curious. What do you mean by magical abilities? And if you can maybe just unpack that idea a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've, again, just looking into this, has to do with these presuppositions of self-divinization. And so these, what we would call apotheosis, these processes in which we divinize ourselves through, for Gnostics, it was through knowledge, through certain, secret societies, it was through rituals. For the alchemists, it was through sort of understanding of the natural elements of creation itself. For the transhumanist, it's through the extension of technology, which they believe to be the extension of ourselves. So these magical abilities has to do with, it's really so subtle to a Christian worldview, actually, because when you look at where this idea comes from, where we're going to sort of move into a millenarian utopia. So traditional Christianity believes that things are going to get much worse before the New Jerusalem, before the second coming of Christ. However, there's been these, again, in the Renaissance, the Hermeticism, alchemy, magical rituals, again, attaining power through magical processes. This has led to, even within Christianity, a new understanding of the historical trajectory of mankind themselves, where we are moving into the Edenic state before the fall through the technology, and it comes with a presupposition that the divine attribute of man is his mind. And so therefore, us being biological entities, animalistic, these are negative attributes that have to be overcome through the extensions of ourselves, through the technology. And so the idea is that, and it's even, it's almost like a deist idea where creation's not fully done. And so man's going to finish creation, and has to do with a misunderstanding, as again, I'm Orthodox, a misunderstanding of who Adam is. So for these people, Adam is the fully realized man before the fall who we're going to become. Now, Orthodoxy, according to St. Maximus the Confessor and these various church fathers, the reason why Adam and Eve couldn't eat from the tree of knowledge is because they were in a juvenile state. Christ, the Logos, had not incarnated yet to fuse human nature and divine nature. So the second person of the Trinity had yet to incarnate. And St. Maximus says that even if we didn't fall, the second person was going to incarnate, because that was the point. Now, obviously we did, and God probably knew that we were going to, but therefore Adam is not who we're going to become. Adam is like a lesser version. Even now, after the incarnation, we're sort of have a level up on Adam and Eve. And so we have a different understanding of our relationship to who Adam is. We're the new Adam for a lot of these magically infused forms of Christianity, which I would argue then transhumanism and the blending of technology itself believes that we're going to get back to a utopian state, the Garden of Eden, through the technology, through our own processes, through the existential pursuit of our own will, which is tied. Then you can look at Thelema, you can look at magic, you can look at witchcraft, all these shamanism, all these different spiritual worldviews that believe, we have to utilize our will to attain something, be it power, knowledge, whatever, to self-divinize, and that this is going to lead us to a perfected state. And so that's one of the things that I've really noticed, is that traditional Christians, it's a subtle, but it's a massive difference, is how we understand history and the trajectory of history. And so what we perceive as the world getting worse, these people believe that the blending of opposites, the dialect. So philosophically, people talk about the collapsing of dialectics. They're trying to collapse the dialectics, and that's where we see the androgyny, the half machine, half man. That they're collapsing the dialectics because unity is privileged over multiplicity, and that's a subtle attribute of these spiritual worldviews. Is that which one's more important, unity or multiplicity? And almost inevitably, all these different spiritual worldviews I'm trying to describe, they believe that unity is tied with divine qualities. And that's where then understandings of the Trinity itself, because the Trinity is one essence, three persons, it's one and many. That's why the Christian Godhead, I always argue, is so more superior. Because if you do believe that God has to be pure unity, then I can say, well, can your God be multiple? And you would have to say no. Where I can say my God is one essence, unified in its nature and its essence, but multiple, as Pythagoras said, three is the first number of multiplicity, in its personhood, which then we are made in the image of, and that's why we can participate in these higher faculties that animals can't. And so it's a totally different worldview. It's so subtle, though. And so when we look at social justice, when we look at making the world a better place, it's so subtle, because I argue and I believe that the Antichrist, to be the inversion of Christ, it's going to be like a subtle misunderstanding of Christianity as a new world religion, and that he's going to be worshipped as God incarnate, because he will be fully transhuman. Where God is fully God, fully man, the Antichrist is going to be fully man, fully machine. And he's going to be able to be everywhere. He's going to be perceived as omnipotent. He's going to be able to open your garage door with his mind, because he's hooked up to the entire connective structure itself. But that's trying to get us into the metaverse, get us into an alternate universe where, again, I would argue the demons, the devil, has a sort of power that he really doesn't have in God's realm, the reality nature that God created. And so Yeah, that's a long rambling. We can go anywhere from there, but that's some of the subtle distinctions in these presuppositions of our spirituality, of our worldview, how we view time, how we view history, how we view our relationship to God, how we view our own divinization. Where, again, as a Christian, I believe we follow Christ to participate in divinity. And that's very different than creating our own divine selves through the extensions of our wills.
Yeah. It's like I think the terms I've heard used to describe it are like the ego drama versus the Theo drama. So the ego drama is like I'm the center of the universe and everything revolves around me, and the Theo drama is I contribute to a larger narrative, which is God's, and it's like that tiny distinction between how you view man and man's relationship to God, although they would probably say man's relationship to matter or relationship to the universe, right? But it's that view, it's actually the way we view ourselves creates uh, fruits in many ways, and the fruits can be rotten or they can be true, but there's only like one tree or one type of fruit that's actually going to save you, which is you could think of that symbolically as the tree that Christ was crucified on. At the same time, there's the tree that damned us. So it's like you can eat from one of the two trees in a way.
Right.
Yeah, that's very interesting, man. There's so many things you said there that I wanted to jump in on and ask you about. Yeah, so all these ideas are kind of linked actually. So it's not that these are separate pockets of random ideologies that are just springing up, but like things like witchcraft and alchemy, they all go back to the same fundamental misunderstanding of our relationship to God, right? Which is again described in probably the archetypal book, which would be Genesis, right? That kind of fault in perspective, I could say. It probably makes sense why there's so much visualism in the Bible about the eye and seeing clearly, right? And being a light. Well, a light needs eyes to kind of perceive it, right? So it's like there's all this drama about your vision and actually seeing, because it all goes back to perspective in a way, and that goes back to how you view the thing that's the source of your perspective. And it kind of makes sense that we experience ourselves as the center of the universe, because it's almost David Foster Wallace had this great speech he gave, like an inaugural speech, and he says something in there that when I heard it the first time I was just blown away. And he said that it's our default state to feel that we're the center of the universe, because think about it, every experience you've ever had, you were exactly in the middle of that experience. The world as you experience it is there in front of you, it's behind you, it's on the left and right of you, it's on your screen, it's on your monitor. So it's easy to forget that everybody's having that experience. And so when somebody cuts you off in traffic, you think, man, this guy, he got in my way. We never think, oh, I was in his way. Maybe he's rushing to the hospital. Or we frame things through the lens that is us. And in that sense, we are very anthropic in the way we view things. And that's like our default state that takes a lot of effort it takes a lot of work to get rid of that wiring. And Christianity is like it's almost like a corrupt virus, if I can stay with the analogy. And underneath that is the true reality that is actually us. But you almost have to work to get there. And your ego, in a way, has to be knocked down a few levels. And then you start realizing what I think is the default state is really just parasitic, and it's sin. And it's separating me from other people. But if you permit that and you do think, oh, I'm the center, then of course all of these ideologies are going to emerge like you described, right? Of course you're going to view yourself as paramount, because, in a way, it really fits into the whole psychedelic thing. Everything I just said about you experience the world in front of you, you're at the exact center. I mean, that really gets amplified under psychedelics, right? You really feel, oh my goodness, it is all me. I am literally.
And we're all the same person. So my will must be everybody's will.
My will must be everybody's will. Therefore, if I am very, very powerful and I have a lot of control and a lot of money, and I think that way, then my decisions are clearly going to benefit everyone, even if those intentions are good. You know, there's that beautiful saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Yep.
It's people
And
that
there's an Orthodox saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but is lit by the skulls of bishops.
Yo, wow. Yeah, well, yeah. So I'm just kind of rambling as well. But yeah, I just wanted to maybe flesh that out a little bit. And you know what you said about, maybe just one more thought about like the union of heaven and earth, like the union of these two opposites. You actually you see that in Christ as well, right? Like Christ is a king, but he's also a rebel.
Yes.
Right? He's both. He's like he's rebelling against authority. At the same time, he's the ultimate authority. Right. And then there's the more obvious examples where like he's the most innocent and he's given the most terrible
blame.
Blame, yeah. And he's the most helpful, but he's treated with the most disrespect, even to the point where his closest followers deny him, right? And more than once. So you see that same unity of incredible opposites coming together in Christ. So that if I could use the word fractal, overlays itself again and again, even in the person of Christ, especially because God is a paradox in the sense that our brains can't fully grasp it. It's like free will and determinism, which is something I want to talk to you a little bit about, because that's a paradox. Because you'll go crazy if you try and understand a paradox. If you try and make sense of the fact that we experience life as free and yet know logically that we're determined. But if you can allow the mystery to be with you, that mystery is actually sanity. To go, well, actually, I am kind of determined because my parents, you know, they met and they had me. So that's like a very immediate way in which, you know, if I imagine they hadn't met, I don't know if I'd be here. But at the same time, I feel and experience completely free. So it's like, okay, well, maybe it's not one or the other. Maybe it's both and. And this goes back to your point, which is my final point, which is that's, you know, matter is bad. The mind is good. We need to destroy the world. We need to transcend reality. It's like, no. It's the unity of the earth and the heaven. It's the unity of matter. That's the incarnation. Yeah. So yeah, just a few thoughts. What do you think of like the free will determinism thing?
Well, related to, I wanted to get back to the paradox of Christ, because that's exactly what he is the fulfilling again of these sort of dialectical tensions that you would think. And humility, then, one of the things that really sets Christianity apart from the other religions is the idea of humility and how that raises us, how the last will be first. And Father Turbo, when I had him on, he gave a wonderful analogy that is so powerful, and that when we think of a king, we think of somebody elevated above us. We're looking up towards somebody with power and authority. But Christ, being God, being the highest, actually demonstrates that the ocean is lower than all other bodies of water. And so everything is moving towards that downhill. It has to be lower than to be higher than, to be more powerful than, to be more encompassing than. And so Christ, in his humility, to wash the feet of his own disciples, who he knows will betray them, who he knows are sinners, who he knows doesn't fully understand the message, doesn't fully understand. But the humility is the demonstration of how we actually do elevate ourselves. And that's where it gets back to community as opposed to isolation. And part of Christian theology is that isolation is part of a demonic process, and the devil's constantly trying to get us to do that. And that's why pride is the mother of all sins, because through our own pride, we self-isolate. Whether you're around tons of people or not, it's the heart that has isolated itself from other people. And through humility, through serving other people, you become lower, but you become greater in the way that, again, God's incarnation, divinity, has showed us what it means to be greater than. And so it's not about a willful dominance of, but it's about a submission to God and different than the Islamic understanding of submission, because that's encompasses much of their paradigm and how they understand God. Ours is going to be a little bit different than that. And humility is going to be a huge part of, again, where people criticize Christianity as being weak, and I would argue that it's not. It certainly has become more feminized, that I think is not traditional Christianity, and that's happened here, and certainly since the 20th century. But Christianity and the humility, I think it's so unique. And I did a whole stream with Father Turbo on the theology of humility and why humility sets it apart. All this magic that we've talked about, all sort of magical worldviews, humility has no place. And even within the materialistic Darwinian worldview, which I reject macroevolution, but being able to, if you're dominating, then you are more superior. You are more fit to the environment that is at hand. Then there is no right or wrong. It's the way that it should go, so that then things can evolve in its natural progression. Well, that's not how Christ showed us that reality actually works.
Wow. Yeah. And what you said about humility and weakness, in some ways, I think it's really hard to balance the two. It's really hard to first of all, it's just really hard to try and be humble, because the moment you try, right, you're really humble. It's like me trying to get you to respect me without showing you respect. It's right. Like I can't put any amount of effort into it if I don't extend that olive branch. If I walk around saying I'm very humble, I'm by default not humble. Right. And so it's like, okay, first of all, it's just hard to be humble, period, because it's not something you can try to do, although you can try and think about yourself less. That is true. But then on the flip side, like there are times when you submit maybe to an authority figure in your life, whoever that might be, and someone from the outside might look at that and say, oh, that guy's so weak, he should have stood up to his bishop, or he should have stood up to his priest, or he should have stood up to his manager. And it's like, well, maybe that guy, in his mind, he's trying to show humility. He's trying to humble himself and submit in a way. And from your point of view, you're thinking, well, that guy should have, he's so weak. So I think in some ways as well, nobody can really know humility from the outside. I think it's a very intimate thing that you have with God. It's very intimate, like almost worrying about, like, do I seem weak by doing this? You have no control. It goes back to what you were saying earlier. You have no control about how other people are going to perceive you. You've zero control. All you can do is hope that this act, if you're doing it in a spirit of humility and somebody else perceives it as weakness, it's kind of out of your hands, Right. And I think that can be freeing to
and that's why that humility is so hidden, that it's your heart. And that's where again it gets back to Christian understandings of judgment. Only God knows your heart. And then that's the whole ball game. It has to do with, again, nobody can have access to that. So not to point fingers, but then religions that are all about submission in the sense of a worldly understanding, that as long as you prostrate, as long as you do the prayers, as long as you do this, you're good, because it's a rule-oriented submission. As long as you do the steps, you're good. Ours, it's not like that. That's why the thief on the cross was the first person to the kingdom, and who knows all his atrocities. However, because he recognized God, and God recognizes the heart and his full submission of who God is, and recognized him and asks, Lord, remember me in your kingdom. He's the first one in. And again, it's the paradox. How does a thief who's being crucified with Christ, how does he get to be the first one into the kingdom after his resurrection? And it's like, but that's the paradox of Christianity, is it's bringing together these opposites, and it's showing that it's this interiority of ourselves dealing with the world. And that's why the world will persecute you when you follow Christ, because I think it's just a natural energetic structure of the way the world is, and how the devil sort of rules through hierarchy, this the planet that is, and the structures that exist right now.
Yeah, and he takes the hierarchies we have and he just inverts them constantly. Yeah.
And so he gets them backstabbing, and that's how he maintains his powers. Those hierarchies are built on greed. They're built on pride. They're built on, making sure you get what you want. And so everybody's backstabbing everybody, which allows him to always stay at the top of this hierarchy. And it's always moving in the direction of, towards, I would argue, the end of days. And so the reason it's not that everybody's in on a plan is, when it comes to conspiracy theory, it's not. It's just that when you participate in sin, you are basically working off. You can't help but the casuistry of the world is going to move itself into a sort of demonic agenda.
Yeah, like you use the word casuistry. It's like you're weaving. Man, it's so hard to talk about this without sounding too woo-woo. But you're weaving aspects of behavior into the world around you through the way you handle people and the way you act. And those don't end with you, and you have no control over them once they're gone. So you can literally make the world a worse place by going out there and just, reveling in sin. And I think the biggest lie we tell ourselves is this is just me, it's private, it's personal, nobody knows about this, so it's not really affecting other people. But I think it does, man. I think on a supernatural level it affects the world, but then also just on a personal level, like that guy who gives into some temptation, I do think it affects the way he relates to other people, at least in the long run. And it happens. I mean, and it's just it's helpful to see the hierarchy. It's helpful to know it's there, because, and it's a blessing and a curse, because once you know about it, you know very well when you're contributing to to evil in the world. I think C.S. Lewis said, "No man knows how bad he is until he tries to be good." Right. And then you start realizing, like, okay, I today through my actions, I advanced the kingdom of Satan in the world, and that's hard. That's hard to acknowledge. Yes. And it's the direct polar opposite when you can go to bed at night and say, today I advanced the kingdom of God. But it's easy to advance the kingdom of Satan, because it's almost like our default. Not that we're not redeemed, not that our sacrifice hasn't been paid, but just day-to-day living, it's easy to sin. Sin is like the easiest thing in the world. Being holy is
it feels good. It tastes good. It's fun. It's fun to a degree, but it's not as meaningful. And so it's just a fruit with no substance to it, right? So it's like you get the outer garments of it, but there's just no core to it. And we are sort of naturally predisposed towards sin, but private sins. Okay, you watch pornography, but you're not harming anybody, but you're watching somebody else's sin, which it's a ripple effect. And sexual sins, I know many saints have talked about how it's one of the few sins that are damaging to your own physical body as opposed to somebody else. But to engage in and say you're not even using porn, but then you're thinking about the clerk at the store that you like, then now you're objectifying her, and you're entangling her in a way into your own sin. And so, but that's the nature of it. Sin isn't communal. It's isolating you from God and other people. But in a way, what's communal about is it drags in other people. And the whole goal, it's a demonic net that's just trying to get everybody wrapped into it. And so
black hole.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just said it's like a black hole.
Yeah. And that's where the light of Christ, then, as you try to do good and you try to follow him, it shines more light into the darkness of yourself. And that's why the holiest people, the closest to Christ, are not only tempted the most, but then are the most repentful, are those who see their sins the most. They see the sin because of the light of Christ that's in them by trying to do the good and follow his way. And so that's again the paradox, right? So the paradox is the closer you get to Christ, the more repentful you are, and the more you feel less worthy, because that should be the relationship that we feel to God if we actually see God the way that he really is, and we see the way that we really are.
Yeah. Did you ever have, I'll tell you mine, just so maybe the question makes more sense, but did you ever have like because I'm, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm certain a time where you were researching Christianity and you were reading a lot about it and it was appealing to you and you were hearing about it, but the weight of your sin hadn't really fell upon you yet.
Right.
It was all more intellectual before it had kind of rested on your heart. And I remember pretty vividly, I was telling my wife about it earlier, driving somewhere, and in my car I was listening to a song by a Christian group called Beautiful Eulogy. So I had been studying the Bible more, I'd been praying more, and I was moving in that direction. After years of blaspheming, years of bashing Christianity, using all of the kind of trope arguments against it, praising all these other religions, thinking Christians were idiots. Years of that, like, just behind me, and now trying to gradually explore this. And then in the song I was listening to, there was this set of lyrics that just pierced me, man. Like I just felt the weight of my sin come down on me. And it was like, it's a weird combination of sadness and joy at the same time. It's like you're joyous that you finally felt something, like like, oh wow, okay, the fact that I feel bad about my sin proves that sin has a real dirty reality, and it's on me. But at the same time, that's awful to feel that, and that's just you. Imagine taking the whole world's sin, forever, future, past, on yourself at once, right? It's no surprise Christ said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm driving, and just to give you the lyrics, they're based, and when you say them to somebody else, you can't put yourself in that context in that moment, right? So it might not hit you in the same way. But driving that day, where I was in my life, I heard these lyrics that basically say, "There was a virus in my iris. I was blinded, and I could not see my righteous Savior laying down his life for me and saying, 'I forgive.'" And I just remember thinking, this God that I've been hating and so angry with, and so eager to blaspheme against, and to make his name worse. Not that you could, but make his name worse to other people. That God is sitting there on the floor with blood dripping off of him, the sacrifice he's just made, and he's still looking at you saying, "I forgive." And at that time in my life, it was this complete, just the weight fell on me. And it's like that, you almost want it again, right? You almost want to have that moment so you can just kind of reorient yourself, because it so radically changes you. But of course you don't want it again. It's like, it's a paradox. Did you have something like that? I know it's maybe a strange question. Did you have like a moment where it went from the symbolism and the studies and the research to a kind of direct piercing?
So for those, just from my journey, like you said, it was very intellectual. So I was a non-Christian. I had a thriving YouTube channel that promoted psychedelics, titled Fractal Universe, and I basically produced content of Terrence McKenna, Robert Anton Wilson, Timothy Leary, anybody and everybody who talked about psychedelics. I'd make sort of visual graphics for people so they could listen to them, and then it would also sort of demonstrate what they're talking about. And so I was doing research for a book called The Psychedelic Gospels, this one right here. And I was really interested in the examples of these frescoes that had to do with psychedelic mushrooms in southern Germany, southern France, northern Italy, Turkey, places like this. And so I was doing a research paper during the first semester of my PhD program. And I thought, this is great. Oh my gosh, I'm discovering like the secret again, like you said, tarnishing the name of Christ. Well, as promoting psychedelics, and I was very interested in the occult and esoteric stuff, and spiritual but not religious is how I'd categorize myself. New age understandings that, oh, this is great. I get to know something that people, these dumb Christians, they don't even know about this freaking mushroom. And they have John Marco Allegro wrote The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, who argued that Jesus Christ was a mushroom based on Gnostic participations in these psychedelic rituals. So that book demonstrates all this evidence, but it's historically contextualized. So it's all between the years 900 and basically the 1300s. Well, after diving into it, I realized, okay, this is all historically contextualized, and it looks like there's emerged a Gnostic heresy called the Cathars, during this point in history, in this point in Europe. And they were then participating most likely in these pursuits because, again, Gnosticism for them, getting into those inebriated states, using the mushroom as a sort of potential Eucharistic activity, getting into those altered states ritualistically would advance their understanding of the kingdom. And so this was this metaphor. So I thought, you know what, I'll probably find more of this in Eastern Orthodoxy because they have all those icons, right? I bet if I studied those icons, I'm going to find more mushroom symbolism, because Gordon Wasson and his wife Valentina Pavlova wrote a book called Mushrooms, Russia and History, I think is what it's titled. And they demonstrate how the Slavonic languages have a immense historical relationship to mushroom picking. And so as we would talk about mushroom phobic cultures that don't really engage with a lot of mushrooms, that would be the Anglosphere. We call them fungus, mushrooms, and toadstools. We have 3 words for them. We're in Slavonic language, they have tons and tons of words. And so knowing all this, I was like, oh, I'm going to find all this stuff in like Orthodoxy. So I took a PhD course on the history and theology of Eastern Orthodox Christianity.
Wow.
And that's where I got sort of initiated into what I call Orthodox or Logos theology. It's Orthodox theology, but it has to do with this understanding of the Logos, the second person of the Trinity, and then how we relate to him in all these different ways. And so Orthodox theology is subtly different than Western Christianity in a few ways. And so I did this whole course, non-believer, but by the end of it, I was like, you know what, this is pretty interesting. This whole Logos thing, that, you know, this idea that God actually became, you know, I don't believe it. I don't believe Jesus, you know, this guy Jesus walked on water. However, if I had to choose a religion, which I wouldn't because psychedelics is the leading edge of the religious experience.
Yes, of course.
I would probably choose like Christianity, because this logo stuff, once you understand it, you know, once you read the church fathers, once you see how educated the people who actually put this tradition together were, it's actually pretty cool. Well, later that summer, it kind of weighed on me, you know, and this is the whole sort of American turning of 2016 with Trump, you know, the rise of Jordan Peterson in 17 and 18. And so this is probably in 2017 is when this whole experience is happening. And then by the fall semester, taking LSD, I sort of have an epiphany of where I see, oh, you know, psychedelics, we're all one. Well, that's the Christian understanding of love your neighbor as yourself. However, Christianity is not saying we're all one nature, but your personhood is actually recognized and differentiated. And that's actually a good thing. So you see the one and the many is maintained. It's not dissolving the plurality of persons. It's maintaining the plurality of persons, because you're made in the image of God. And therefore that image can't be destroyed unless you choose to destroy it through your own sin. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then the logos, sacred geometry, fractal mathematics, all these things that psychedelics are associated with spiritually in the New Age. I was like, wow, all this stuff I thought about with the logos and logos theology of Christianity, it all makes a lot more sense. Morality, truth, epistemology. And so basically that led to, on 11/11/2018, I committed my life to Christ in a way that it's like I just couldn't intellectually deny that this had to be real.
Yeah.
And that led to me praying way more. And that's where, for me, the softening of my heart and this whole this light of Christ entering your life where you can see more of yourself. It was me a gradual process through prayer. And that's why I'm very emphatic when I speak to people on one-on-one, or anybody who asks for my own advice or is going through a similar journey of myself, is that you got to pray, because once you start praying, you're going to become slowly more sensitive to it. And then you're going to notice you do things that make you not want to pray. And that's what you got to really pay attention to, because these are sinful activities that you're slowly recognizing. So for me, I smoked weed like every day throughout my 20s. So it was about inebriation. It was about weed. It was about pornography. It was about the way, you know, premarital sex, all these different things that to me are normal and even okay within American culture. I'm like, geez, whenever I engage in those things, I don't want to pray. I don't want to get down on my knees before I go to bed. I want to just go to bed. And then in the next day, I kind of feel better. And it's like, okay, well, now I can pray because I went to bed and today I feel better. But when you engage in, you don't want to do that. And so that then just worked on me. And it was a slow, for me, it wasn't, the heart opening was not an immediate moment. For me, the immediate moment was an intellectual connection of what I thought my spirituality was and why then logos theology is actually what I was looking for. But then it was like trying to do the work. And I think God did that providentially because I want these like powerful singular experiences. And that's why I was all obsessed about psychedelics for so long. And so it's like, no, for me, I had to put in a lot of work. And, I've been on this Orthodox Christian journey for about 4 years now. And it's just, I can see it in myself, how I become so much more aware, so much more sensitive, especially once I got baptized in, the sensitivity to my sin, the sensitivity. Maybe I just say something slight or quick to somebody, and then it's like, I can feel how it rubs me a little bit the wrong way later. And these things. So for me, it was an intellectual conversion, and then it was like putting the work in that opened up my heart. And that's the internal process. I'm not saying that my heart's fully open. I'm saying that is now the journey that I feel like my spiritual life is on, is trying to open that up more and more and more, see myself more as I would think God probably sees me. However, he, in his forgiveness, as you're talking about, in that weight of sin, he has already forgiven me. And so a lot of times it's me forgiving myself.
Yeah.
Because Christ has already forgiven me. And so that has just been a continual journey for the last 4 years. And I like lifting weights, and this humility thing, being like Christ, it's so difficult that it's the first spirituality. I've been to China. I was into Gnosticism and magic and New Age and psychedelics. It's the first one that's like really difficult. And then that's why it's like really meaningful.
Yeah.
And this opening of one's heart, you can feel, wow, this is really what it's about, isn't it? And you can feel it. But you can't give that to somebody. So it's not an intellectual idea. It's a lived experiential reality that, again, it's like when your heart and your mind finally connect, you can then understand this and feel it. And that's really then why you want to tell people about Christ and like talk about this stuff, because it's not just an idea. It's something like, it's a reality you want to give to people. And that's when you talk about like, oh, I know Christ, or you talk about Christ and it just rubs people the wrong, like, what are you talking about, dude? And you're like, dude, he's in my heart, man.
I can say, right. I mean, do you think that's why so many? So I'll say two things, but I'd really love you to. I'm really curious what you think about the second question. The first one is like, I don't know if I'm just imagining this. I could totally be wrong, but it seems like a lot of the online debates between Christian groups, be they Orthodox or Catholics or Protestants, it seems like a lot of those debates are happening between converts. I don't know if I'm just imagining that. It seems like a kind of, not that there aren't reverts who are also involved, and there are obviously some, cradle Orthodox and cradle Catholics who are there, but it seems to me primarily like we've all converted and we all have this fire and this like desire to be zealous, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, it's not that I'm sharing an idea with you, I'm sharing a reality. And you're like, the guy that just came back from outside of the cave, and you just saw the light, and you're like, oh my gosh, guys. And then people are complaining with you because the shadows on the wall look so much more pretty, and you're just like, you have no idea. I think, do you think maybe this is the question, do you think maybe that fresh convert, desire to be zealous is fueling a lot of anger, and a lot of, even, not that there's anything wrong, I think, with having passion, of course not, that's a wonderful thing, but I wonder how much of that is kind of fueling these, I would say, kind of tribalism within Christ's body. And I don't think Christ's body, not that there are, and obviously people would disagree about what Christ's body is, but there does seem to be a lot of tribalism between Christian groups. And do you think it has something to do with the converts?
Absolutely. I think that, speaking within Orthodoxy, within America, there's been a massive influx of young men. So if you look at Christian denominations in the United States, the youngest average Christian denomination, so Protestants are averaging in the 50s, the average attendee, where Orthodoxy is the youngest in the United States. The only two that are younger is Hinduism and Islam. So obviously there was a cultural traditions that are being brought over by immigrants, and so their kids are being born into it, which is going to change the average age. But Orthodoxy is significantly younger than other forms of Protestantism, and so we see the detritus of our culture, of our secular Western culture. And so young men who have put a few dots together and have seen a larger picture have been looking for something. And so Christianity, once they come to some sort of realization of it being Christ, especially their anatheistic return, so that means God after God. So maybe you grew up whatever form of Christian or spiritual, and then you've left, you did, had your own journey. Now you're coming back. This is the anatheistic return. Now, there is a sort of tribalism, and there is a lot of, again, apologetics is important. I do a lot of apologetics on my channel. Mine's mostly oriented towards the New Age, occultism, spiritual not religious, and psychedelics. So mine isn't as much towards the internal conflicts between the Christian churches and denominations, but a convert is somebody who's already looked into a lot of different things.
True.
And so they do bring a zealousness, and they also bring within Orthodoxy an understanding of the tradition that usually is far superior to cradles, because that's just the water that they swim in. And so they didn't know that, why iconography is good or bad, or any particular accoutrement of the particular denomination. Whereas a convert, they've already read books and they've already looked into it. And so then there is this, because if it is true and you really do believe it, and then we live in a nihilistic secular culture, what's more meaningful than actually defending the truth that you feel like you've discovered? And so there is a sense of real meaningfulness for these converts, but there's a lack of charity, I would say, to some degree too. I have plenty of friends that are Protestant. There's been and Catholic. Like we're friends. And I can have my own beliefs. Again, I am Orthodox. I believe Orthodoxy is the true church, but my Orthodox theology says we do not condemn anybody who's not Orthodox, because we're not God, and God's judgment is God's judgment. And so God decides. And so we believe that there's going to be Catholics and Protestants that are going to make it to the kingdom. And so I have many friends that participate in sort of the rock band Protestant church culture, and in Catholics and Orthodox, we tend to mock this form of Christianity in the secular world. So you're wearing your Jordans, and you get up there and it's sort of a personality sermon, rock bands, electric drum sets, all this different stuff. But I also know those people, and those people are great people. And so we can't, that's when it's like no longer you being Christian, when we're not seeing the person in front of us. And we're seeing everybody boxed in categories of, you believe in the papacy, or you believe in sola scriptura, whatever it is, or you believe in, you think icons, that's a heresy, that's a degradation, that's a worship of an image. Whatever it may be, we need to approach each other as people and as other faith-believing Christians. And I think a lot of stuff will sort itself out. But the converts, there's a sense of meaning in defending your tradition. There's a sense of identity in differentiating what you are and why you're not something else. And often they're the ones that know the most about the faith, because the cradles never had to really look into it and come to a conclusion on things. And so, I know that in Orthodoxy, for example, there's a real, what we would call piety signaling. There's also a problem of, we talk about social justice, virtue signaling. Well, within Christianity, and this was probably true for all the denominations, there's a sense of piety signaling where you say or do things to demonstrate your piety. And so, and that's a step towards the Pharisaical spirit, where now it's going to become rule oriented, and because that's how you're building your self identity. is look how pious I am, look how righteous I am because I abide XYZ. So now you're establishing rules that are probably there for good reasons in all of our different traditions, but demonstrating why I abide by this and I abide by this and I abide by this. And so look at me. And this is another way in which the Pharisaical spirit or this worldly prideful spirit infiltrates Christianity through a performative attribute of humility, right? Because it gets back to humility. And so now we're performing our piety and our righteousness. And there's no difference between the virtue signaling that believes in social justice or a Christ believing person who's now, piety signaling based on their own tradition or how they are closer to Christ than somebody else.
Yeah, man, you said that so well. And yeah, it's like, it's not that you can't have debate. I mean, it's just you have to be able to have a debate and a disagreement and remember that you're talking to another person, not a caricature of what you think this person believes. Because if you actually get to know the person, I mean, I guess I could say it like this. I think one of the things missing in the Catholic and Orthodoxy debate is the reason people become Catholic or Orthodox. Because if I could maybe use I'll go on a brief tangent, but just to make this point extremely clear. So like in, funny enough, Orthodoxy by Chesterton, he actually talks about like our relationship to the universe and our relationship to the earth. And he says like you get people that are coined as like optimists and you get people that are considered pessimists about the future of the country. And then he says that the optimist thinks everything is great except the pessimist. His only problem is the pessimist. And the pessimist thinks everything is wrong except himself. So he's the one exception. And then Chesterton says, well, actually, he gives this quote that he attributes it to a little girl that once said, a pessimist is someone who looks after your feet and an optimist is somebody that looks after your eyes. So the optimist is more interested in the visions and the ideal and what you can accomplish and what we could hope to achieve, whereas the pessimist is looking at your feet and where are you right now and what's going on in the world, and let's be realistic about these problems.
That's phenomenal.
Right? It's a beautiful idea. And then he says, but actually we aren't in the position to be optimists or pessimists. The idea is nonsensical. And then Chesterton takes a step back and he says that people talk about this earth as if they were house hunting. They come here and they say, oh, well, the fact that we have rabid dogs, that's a bit sad, but at least we have beautiful mountains. Oh, and the fact that we have crime and murder, well, at least we have delicious food and we have families and we have all these good things. And he says, well, from what position do you get to make that kind of a judgment? It's not like you're coming from some other universe and now saying, well, this universe is okay because we have this and this and this and this. He says, no, you have a loyalty to this earth before you get to choose if you have any admiration for it. You're already enlisted in the army before you even know what war you're fighting, because you're born into this world, you're thrown into this world, and this is it. And if you have true patriotism, and this is what Chesterton says is the healthy alternative to optimism and pessimism is true patriotism. He says like I live in a city called Pretoria. If I'm optimistic about Pretoria and I think it's great as it is, it will never get better. It will just stay as it is. It'll just stay however good or however bad it is. But if I'm pessimistic, it'll get worse because I won't care. I won't care about it. So he says that if something is wrong, that's a reason. If something is great, that's a reason for loving it. But if something is broken, that means it needs more love. That's more of a reason for loving it. And that's the patriotic view. If my country, which I care about, is broken, that's more reason to care about it and to fight for her. But if I'm just optimistic and I think things are okay, things are never going to get better. So I have to have a deeper appreciation, which is not based as if I'd come from some other country, when you were born. This is it. This is what you have. You can love it or not. And then he kind of goes into this idea of, let me just get my train of thought. He talks about the fact that the optimist and the pessimist are therefore kind of inconsequential. You have the flag of the world attached to you, and then you can choose how you're going to go about it. So why am I telling you this? Well, I want to bring this over to like my earlier point, which is the thing missing in Catholic and Orthodox debates, I think is just the reason people become Catholic or Orthodox. I can only speak from my own experience, and obviously from some people I've spoken to, which their stories relate very much to mine, but yours might not, and many, many people's might not relate to mine. But when I was starting to explore Catholicism, I didn't begin in books. I didn't begin looking at arguments. I didn't become Catholic in contrast to orthodoxy. It's not like orthodoxy was there and I was, weighing them up. It's more like I got enveloped in this world that I found and still find very beautiful. I went to mass. I was reading about the history. I was looking at Catholic art, and I was looking at the theology, and these things moved me. I had a loyalty before I really knew the larger picture. So now when I find out about all these debates online, which I did in part when I discovered your channel, and that spread out. When I found out about all these debates, if I go and watch a debate between an Orthodox and a Catholic, I can't lie to you. I'm going to be slightly more charitable to the Catholic position. So when somebody mentions something terrible that a pope did, it's like I'm going to try and frame that in a more charitable way.
Right.
Which can lead to many mistakes and many faults, but I don't think it's something I do consciously. I think I'm already enveloped in this world and I've fallen in love with it. And from my own experience, I believe it's true, which is exactly how an Orthodox person would feel. And I'm not trying to be a relativist here. I'm just saying that would be your experience as well. You're likely to be more charitable to the negative things in your own tradition and more critical of the negative things in other traditions. And so it's like, instead of just looking at arguments or intellectual arguments, which are important and things you've said to me, I've gone and looked into, but it's not, you might get to your faith through an intellectual journey, but switching faiths, I don't think is purely intellectual, because you have to, it's a lot of factors. It's your social life, it's your emotional life. And I think just separating it from all that is just not realistic. Right. Yeah. So I view these conversations and conversations I have with Protestants and Orthodox now. I didn't used to. I used to be a little bit more zealous. And not that that word is so tricky, but I now look at these as opportunities to learn, because if, I want to know, I want to be as close to Christ as possible. But I would be putting myself at more risk if I left something where I feel I'm with Christ for something that other people are telling me is Christ, and I haven't gotten there yet myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's that kind of human element that I think needs to be there. And so understanding that, you can then have a healthy discussion, I think, about, okay, well, how did you come to get to this point of view? Like, walk me through your conversion. Like, how did you get there? And it's not because I'm trying to convert you. It's just I'm trying to understand your point of view better, and you're trying to understand my point of view better. And I think that leads to a healthier integration, because if the truth can stand the test. So if your tradition is true and somebody starts coming and asking questions, it's never going to collapse. So you don't have to worry about that. So just enjoy the conversation and try and learn from the other person and see how that fits into. And the beautiful thing about our tradition, the beautiful thing about Christianity, is that there are elements of truth everywhere. So it's not like I can't speak to a Muslim and hear something, like hear a word of wisdom and think, oh, wow, that's really true. That really hit me, know? And so you have endless opportunities to further incorporate truth into you. Now, of course, you have to discern what is true and not, but there are elements of truth everywhere, because the logos is present everywhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that concept too, by Saint Justin Martyr, is called logos spermaticos, and that's just Greek for sperm, seeds of logos everywhere. And so, and I believe Justin Martyr is a saint also in the Catholic Church. So this is a saint for both of our traditions, that he argued that, we as Christians, the problem with perennialism, saying all religions lead to the same mountaintop, is on what epistemic framework or basis are you making the claim that all these traditions are moving to the same place? Because the fundamental epistemology of a pagan worldview or an atheistic worldview or a Hindu worldview or a Christian worldview or a Muslim world, they're not exactly one-to-one or the same. However, there's going to be overlap, of course. So Justin Martyr talked about, St. Justin Martyr said it's logos, there's seeds of logos everywhere. The logos is Christ, the logos incarnated as a man. And as Christians, that's why we worship Christ, because he is God incarnate. But at the same time, we shouldn't hate other people, because they are also dealing with the context, the throneness of the world, to use a Heideggerian term. But I did a stream on the paradox of free will. There's a lot of things that God gives us that we didn't choose. Your race, the nation you live in, the language you have, your parents. Is your dad an alcoholic? Is he abusive? Your siblings. We're not given any of this stuff. In a way, God chose it for us. However, then the whole salvific journey is how we respond to it through our free will, which can't be violated by God. And that's where then the whole spiritual game of the devil is trying to get us to choose sin. And so the whole game's about free will. There's a lot of things we didn't choose. And it seems like part of the world, and I don't want to go too deep, but transgenderism, it's like we're trying to change immutable characteristics that God gave us. So it's like, oh no, you do have free will. You can change your family, just divorce, totally separate yourself from your family, your parent. Oh, they're conservative and you're liberal. Yeah, don't talk to them. Like totally just X them out of your life, or change your race. There's like transracial is a thing now. Transgenderism, where it's like we have to embrace the sort of thrownness that God puts us in. And then from there, everything's about our free will and how we decide and react to everything. And that's really empowering, actually, because it means that, wait, my free will and so it's like the world, life itself is constantly unfolding before you, waiting for you to make the choice. How are you going to respond?
Yeah. It's like, it really does make you a main character in a story. Because even if you don't have that view, even if you're just selfish and you think of yourself as the main character, I don't think you really experience it that way, because to experience it that way, you have to see reality as something that is almost edging you on towards what you could become. And that's exciting, because you can wake up in the morning and think, I wonder what is going to happen today. And sometimes it's very nerdy, but sometimes I like to think of Christianity as the law of reality. So you talk about like guys who are I'm really into Star Wars lore. I'm really into World of Warcraft lore. The ancient texts, which were just written by people. Not to take away from these writings, some of them are brilliant, but it's a product of our imagination. It's like, okay, well, what is the product of God's imagination? It's like, oh, reality. So when I read the Bible, I'm literally reading the sacred scrolls of reality, and there's a part of that just appeals to me so deeply. You watch a movie and there's a prophecy, and you think, oh, there's this ancient promise that's going to be fulfilled. And you think that's so cool that movies have that. Yeah, but where did the movie get that idea of prophecy? Right? There's prophecy in reality. Right. It's there. It's present. It's part of the air we breathe. And seeing that, you mentioned it's empowering. It's like it totally it fills your life with wonder, really.
Yeah. Because it's meaning, and that's what the Western man's desiring. And so the hedonism is the search for meaning that is debasing ourselves and moving us further from God and isolating ourselves further and further. And that's why this is so empowering. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think it's like that meaning. Finally, people are able to find meaning. And like you're talking about being a central character, it's not a prideful central character like we began with the magical understanding of pride and self-divinization. It's an empowering character that has submitted to God's reality. And when somebody super chats me, thank you, Lord, because it's God working through them. When somebody says very critical things, okay, well, it's all providence. It's like, that's a really difficult place to get. It's like everything is providential, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And just thanking God for, in a way, it's all salvific journey. Like the providence is laying itself out on how I respond to it, is giving me the opportunity to move forward.
Yeah. Just it puts some, it just, it puts some action into you. It puts some agency into you. You know, I mean, the word animate is anima, which is soul, right?
Yeah.
It animates you. It enlivens you. It gives you that spirit of willingness to cooperate. And now, just, you know, you mentioned it's not the kind of prideful example we were talking about at the beginning, being the central character. But now you're walking on the street and you see a guy who's maybe begging for something. You can see he really needs help. And now suddenly the framework of that whole situation is different. It's like, I mean, you know, as far as I know, this could literally be set up. You know, this could be an angel for all I know. You know,
Right.
and it's like this moment could be, I could die tonight, and the last thing I did was reject this guy who needed something when I had more than enough to give or to share. And it's like, okay, then charity pops up. Am I going to show the virtue of charity? It's like, no, I'm going to withhold it this time. It's like, okay, well, do I really have it? Yeah, but I'm struggling. Yeah, but if you're struggling, it's like, it's even more charity to give the little that you have. So and you might not end up going with a specific decision or the other, but that whole thought process just wasn't there before. That whole framing of myself in relation to that guy, in relation to God above and God within, and now how do I facilitate this moment? And then when you get home, your body and your mind and your thoughts, it tells you if you were there or not. You can feel that you can never lie to yourself, right? You at some point you'll think, I probably could have been a little bit nicer to that person. It goes back to something you mentioned earlier. So yeah, it's
Can I pick up on the angel part?
Please do. Yeah, I'm curious what you think about that. I kind of hesitated saying it, but
one of the great abbots in American Orthodoxy, Abbot Trifon, he founded a monastery called Vashon Monastery near Seattle, Washington. And he talks about what he calls angels unaware, and that angels are around us. And he talks about examples in which one particularly a hierarchy of the church he's in. He's in the Rokor, the Russian Orthodox Church. He was with one of the hierarchs, and they were walking down the street, and he could see in the up, you know, basically crossing one of the blocks, coming towards them on the sidewalk, was this man. He's absolutely filthy. His shoes are, you know, barefoot on the concrete, but he still got shoes tied on his feet. Looks almost demonically possessed. And he was going to move the hierarch and go to the other side of the sidewalk. And as he was getting, trying to sort of guide him in that direction, he says, well, hold on, stop. What are you doing? And so he then moves, makes a deliberate advancement towards the man who's coming towards them. And so when he gets close, he stops him, the hierarch, and gives him like $20. And the man looks up, and Abbot Trifon said it was the bluest eyes that he has ever seen in his life and still have ever seen. And he gave him the $20, and the man looked at the hierarch, and I don't know if he said anything or not, but he sort of walked off, and Abbot Trifon, made a comment, and the hierarch said, that was an angel. Didn't you realize? And,
wow.
And so he has all these stories about, homeless people. So he walks around with a 20, a 10, and a 5, and whatever he pulls out of his pocket, he gives to them, and he considers it providence, whatever God, whatever he pulls out. And he has stories of, a homeless man who was begging, that he gave him $20 because he said he needed food, and he was probably a drug addict. And he made the man promise that he was going to buy food with it. And so he gave him the money, and then he sits down to, I think it was at a coffee shop, to sort of enjoy his, maybe it was a bagel or something with his espresso. And somebody came up and said, how dare you give that man $20? He's a crackhead. He's always here pestering people outside the restaurant. You're just going to enable him. And the man came back, and he literally spent the money only for food. And the man who then was criticizing him began to apologize, began to cry, because it only works in our salvation anyways. And that's part of being Catholic or Orthodox. Even if you have a bad priest, Protestants will say, I can't believe you guys kiss the hands. You guys worship men. Like, why would you ever kiss the hand of a priest? And it's about this humility. Then again, submitting to the hierarchy. This icon is Christ, the high priest. We believe that he is the highest priest, and that when you are revering your priest, you're revering the priesthood that Christ has established. And so, even if I do have a bad priest, by me taking the Eucharist from him and still submitting and still being righteous, I'm advancing my salvation. And by me doing that, if he is a bad person, he's moving further and further away. And so I'm being a catalyst for my own salvation. Potentially, I can bring him closer to God by the way he responds to me. Or say he is bad. Well, that's only hurting him more and more and more. And so again, it's like, well, you can't control. And so you can focus on what you can control. And by showing humility and submission to the church, it only aids in our favor. And so that's ties back into everybody's providence. And how do we know who's an angel and who's not an angel? And how do we know when we don't act as angels? And that's when, again, the anima, the sort of animating spirit of the world comes into play, because you're like, wow, wait, people can perceive me as an angel. And that's where I think, archetypes, in a way, we can move through space and time and almost be an archetype. Another example is as Abbot Trifon. He kind of looks like Gandalf. And so he's an abbot. So he wears all the black and all this stuff. And he has a story about one time he had a little extra time to go to an old running path that he used to do outside Portland, Oregon. And so Portland has all types of hills and mountains and beautiful nature, evergreen trees, forests. And so he parked, and there was one car in the parking lot. And he said, oh, this is great. I'll be able to, to go spend some time in nature for a while. I think he had 4 or 5 hours before he needed to be somewhere. And he hadn't done that in years. And he used to run this path as a kid. And so he would run, and he would have a lunch box where he would have like a coffee and a sandwich. And so he took off. I don't know if he could run at that point, but he was walking the trail, and he got to the point where he usually sits and eats a sandwich. And there was a man sitting there, and he yelled at him, hey, how you doing? And the guy turned around, and you could see he was startled, almost like he was seeing a ghost. And Abbot Trifon said, I have a sandwich and some coffee. Do you mind if I share it with you? And so he goes and sits on the log next to the man, and he sees that the man has a revolver in his hand. And the man said, are you an angel? And he said, no, I'm not an angel. I wish I was. And he said, well, I just came here to kill myself. And, his girlfriend broke up with him. I think he lost his job or something. His dad wanted him to do all this stuff with his life that he didn't want to do. And he had stolen his dad's gun and loaded it and gone to this, again, remote forest. And he was that other car in the parking lot, which, again, what are the chances that Abbot Trifon would have found him in the forest? And he said, I just prayed to God that if he wanted me to live, to send an angel. And that's when you yelled at me, and I turned around, and it was you. And you can imagine Abbot Trifon. He has all this white hair, long white beard, and all black.
In the middle of the woods.
In the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
And the man began crying and sobbing. And Abbot Trifon shared a sandwich, and he shared a coffee with him. He grabbed the gun from him, and he unloaded it and threw all the bullets out into the forest. And they began talking, and he explained the whole situation. And they eventually walked back, and he had the man promise him that he was going to take the gun back to his father and tell him what just happened. And he promised him that he would. He never saw the guy again. But you see how, is Abbot Trifon an angel? Was he an archetype? Like, how exactly did that work? But he was the providence of the moment. The providence was, in fact, in a way, he was the angel that the man prayed for. And so the casuistry of the world, we just cannot comprehend how God uses us. And so that's why it's so important for us to, again, try to focus on our own spirituality and our own relationship to Christ, so that he can use us as tools. And that's one of the things I pray all the time, is that God, please use me as a tool and a conduit for your will. And if I can do that, well, then, whether I reach the kingdom or not, at least brief moments in my life, God can reach through me to other people that maybe they were praying for something that I don't know, like maybe I'm saying something, maybe I'm doing something that it resonates to a prayer, an internal state that they're having, It's not synchronicity, it's God's providence. And we then are an archetype. We are the angel, and we are a sort of living Christ in the world. And I don't think there's anything more beautiful or higher than that. And that gets back to this meaningfulness of the animating spirit.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. I just can't imagine what must have been going through that guy's head when he turned around and saw this monk, or dressed like what he probably thought was a monk in the woods. I've had a conversation once with someone where we were kind of talking about the church and its ethics, and I'm Catholic and they're not, and they're trying to figure it out. And we got into the topic of why the church regulates people's sexual lives so much. And without going into too much detail, we eventually got to the point where she asked me about, I'm just trying to think how to phrase this without being too crass. But she asked me about, I'll just say it, oral sex, right? Mm-hmm. And she said, like, why is the church opposed to that? And she wasn't like, what can I say, not like advocating for it, but just curious. And without missing a beat, I said, because it demeans the human being. And she just broke into tears. She just started crying. And it was one of those moments where I felt like that was kind of what she needed to hear. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even think about what I was going to say when I said it, but it was exactly what she needed to hear. And then she said, I felt that way for so long, but I haven't heard it just called out like that, because the culture is so affirming of it right now. Mm-hmm. That to just say, well, it's actually, actually, especially if you think about you're talking to a woman, right? It's actually demeaning to you. Like, you're not just an object that somebody else can just use in more and more creative ways to get off. And you're objectifying yourself in a way if you permit that. And it's like any guy who truly loves someone wouldn't want to do that to her anyway. And it's such an unpopular thing to say these days. But that's the reality. And she needed to hear that. And it's exactly that moment where it's like, I didn't do that, but I felt like in that moment, it's like, people talk about the Holy Spirit speaking through you. Yep. You don't necessarily feel something, but you see it in the reaction of other people. And right. And all I did was tell the truth. And that's it. That's logos. That's literally what the person needs to hear. Right?
And that's what we're called to as Christians, is to speak exoteric truth as loud as we can, as opposed to esoteric truth. So again, getting back to the difference between pride and our earlier conversations on magic, is all that's wrapped up in somehow that there's secret things that we need to know, and some of them needs to be kept from other people. Where Christ, that's why he taught in parables, is because an analogical parable semiotically allows so many levels of truth to be explored that he can tell you everything in one story. And so we're called to not keep any secrets, but just to speak truth as clearly and plainly and as accurately as we can. And that's what it means to be inspired.
Yeah. I mean, isn't the word inspired inspiros, which means literally put spirit into?
Exactly.
So it's literally
getting back to the Holy Spirit, that you're talking about. Exactly.
Yeah, it's that. And this, we've actually mentioned the term a few times. I'm curious what you think of this. We've mentioned this term, kind of secular culture, or maybe even, I'll sometimes find myself using the phrase world culture, which I really just mean secular culture. But Patrick, is it even a culture? Is it not a non-culture? Isn't it something? There's no positive reality there. It's just the disillusion of things, the disillusion of categories, right? I mean, even I think I almost think we should stop calling it secular culture. It's like it's the vacuum of culture.
Well, culture comes from cults, right? So every cult has its own culture.
Okay.
And so that's part of the etymology. So I get your point, because the culture of the secular world's in destruction of all the other cultures. That's the point of it.
Yeah.
Which itself, if you believe to it, in a way, is you being part of the cult, right? So it is in a way its own culture in the destruction of culture. And so, which is a weird, again, this false collapsing of dialectics, not a true collapsing of dialectics. That, again, I would argue that Christianity offers, but this worldliness of man and machine and male and female androgyny, which we know, this is the agenda moving forward, is the technocracy, the spacefaring civilization. Again, we don't need to get too far into that if people believe in that or not, but certainly the narrative of that is that we need to become less male and less female so that we become something somewhere in between. And that way we can blend with machines. And now we have, babies. I just saw that an entire sheep or a goat was raised in a sort of a sack. It was like a plastic bag that's supposed to mimic a female womb. Wow. And this is getting into the Matrix metaphor of us being sort of batteries. I mean, it is literally a whole baby sheep that is being birthed through a laboratory process that began with artificial insemination, gene editing, and then just growing it in a plastic sack that you could see through. And this was supposed to be the womb. And this is, in my belief, again, the demonic process. And so we as traditional Christians, this is not progress, this is regress. And this is creating a system in which Satan can take and become and attain the attributes of divinity that he doesn't actually have. He can't actually be everywhere at once. But through all the technology, and if he does sort of inhabit the AI, so I don't believe that AI can become sentient. I'm a promoter of weak AI. This gets into the philosophy of somebody like John Searle. I don't believe in strong AI. I don't think that's possible. However, as a Christian, I do believe in demons and spirits, and I think they have wills and intentions. And so I believe that it is possible that the devil himself could incarnate a reversed incarnation into a sort of AI system. And so this then affords him a status of divinity through the creation of fallen man. Right. So we're in a fallen state. We're creating all this technology. And so because we are in a fallen state, it's both good and bad. Technology doesn't have an intention, so it can't be evil innately. Evil necessitates a will, but demonic entities, the devil himself, Satan, Lucifer, could potentially, in my worldview, inhabit these systems so that he can be everywhere at once. He can, like I said, the Antichrist, he could know about your garage code, your bank account, what's going on in Rio de Janeiro, what's going on in Beijing, all at the split of a moment, perceived as divine. Oh, through the technology, we're going to become immortal. We're going to become all-knowing. I don't really think you can, but this is this metaverse, this inverted reality, this fallen man's man-made universe through the pursuit of prideful desires of this Gnostic pursuit of knowledge. And so it's like, it's not that there are a bunch of people who are in on conspiracy. It's that the trajectory of history itself, even according to scripture, was that it was going to go here because it was necessary for those then who really believed in Christ, that slowly but surely the world's going to differentiate itself more and more and more and more from those who are truly believers. And that's why we're going to be persecuted.
Yeah, very well said, man. I have maybe just a few more questions I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
So I know there's Church of the Eternal Logos, and before that you had Fractal Universe. Were you doing anything before Fractal Universe? What made you decide to start uploading videos to YouTube?
Well, for Fractal Universe, it was at the time I wanted to create videos that I wanted to watch. And so the videos I made, again, it would be like maybe a lecture from Terence McKenna, or it'd be a thematic section from a lecture where he's talking about Hermeticism or Gnosticism. And then it's like, well, instead of just looking at the video with just like a picture, I myself would like to watch if there was a YouTube channel of like a whole video going through and giving visuals for everything he's talking about. So initially I felt like, oh, well, there's a space, like I want to create something that I want to watch. And so that's what that process really started to, which then led in to me really liking, again, this idea that I could create content and make money online. And it was very successful. So I stopped it due to my own Christian journey, in the sense that I no longer liked making those videos, but at the time that's how I paid my rent, was the monthly ad revenue from YouTube, which that YouTube channel got many more views than I get now, which is interesting because now my YouTube channel is only 15,000. It's moving on 16,000 right now. The Church of the Eternal Logos, where Fractal Universe, I haven't posted a video in like 3 years. It's still at 79,000 subs. And the engagement though. So even though I have such a smaller audience, this 15,000 talking about Orthodox Christianity, and then any and every topic, the engagement, the amount of money I actually make is not that it's all about that, but I mean, it is a business. This is like what I'm trying to do with my PhD and my research is to create online content and sort of be outside the university structure so I can maintain Christian values. Because to work at a public university in the United States, you have to sign a diversity waiver that says you support BLM, LGBTQ, critical race theory, all this stuff. You can't, within a university classroom, speak ill against these things. You'll be fired immediately. It violates the contract to teach itself. So when I saw that and my values changed during my PhD program, that's when I decided I needed to create Church of the Eternal Logos as my outlet, because I love reading. I love doing research. Like doing scholastic stuff is like what I love to do. And so I love putting together my streams, my thematically oriented streams. The biggest difference that I notice is, again, the audience and the engagement and the relationships. I had, again, like 85,000, I think, on Fractal Universe. Nobody was like a close friend, no, I wasn't celebrating other people's marriages and being invited to places. And, people tell me how much I've helped them in one way or another. And it's really, again, a humbling process, because it's like God, just like when you talked about saying something that the woman, I know how fallible I am. I know how much I sin and mess up. So when people tell you these things, it really is me. It makes me, I can see how God can use me and use people through our skills and talents, and makes me really want to be better and better and better, because it's humbling. It's not self-grandizing, because as a Christian, I know how I keep screwing up, and really it's not me, because I know it's the Spirit. But comparatively, the YouTube channels are so much different, but the smaller one is so much more meaningful, and there's so many more connections with people, genuine people, than the other one. And so it's just this really interesting dichotomy, looking at the world, how something so popular like the other one promoting psychedelics, but didn't have a whole lot of relationships with the people who consumed my stuff, where this one, which is a lot smaller, and I put a lot more effort into it, and it's really just me talking about the ideas that I talk about, the relationships, the support, the outreach, the emails, totally different feel. And so, kind of off topic, the original question was, did I plan on creating content with Fractal Universe? But it was really just to fill a gap. And then Church of the Eternal Logos was to create a career, to create something that I was going through a journey. So I did my undergraduate. I was a religious studies biology double major with a minor in Mandarin. And I spent 2 summers in China. Really was interested in religious studies as opposed to biology. And so went and did a master's degree at the University of Illinois, focusing on early Christianity, Gnosticism, really, Hermeticism, and then psychedelic shamanism. And then that led into a PhD focusing on people who are spiritual, not religious, which, as I said earlier, the psychedelic gospels led into this, led into that. So my academic research is focusing on transhumanism, which is I'm arguing, is a new religious movement coming out of the Western esoteric traditions. But the Fractal Universe was part of this journey, promoting what I believed to be true, psychedelics, realizing that isn't actually what I believed, and it's really not even me creating. I'm just repackaging other people's ideas, where this other one is totally me and my ideas, totally dependent on me articulating what I think it to be true. And from the onset, the intention was to sort of step out of the university structure. I want to be able to do research and write things and make arguments, but I don't want to compromise my Christian faith. And so that then led into the journey of creating Church of the Eternal Logos, which is not a church. It's not a church. The only point was to just to get people thinking, I'm going to talk about anything and everything from a logos oriented perspective. So whether it be NPCs, non-playable characters, or whether it be masks, during when the coup hit. So I did a whole video on the ritualistic initiation and tribal settings and how masks work. What is the role of masks? So that's what I'll do is I'll take an academic framework. It just explain the role of masks. And now you can look at society. Are we going through a ritualistic initiation in which we have to change our perception of who we think we are so that we emerge into a new self-collective identity? Obviously I make the argument that is the case, but so now that's what I do. I just take this journey and I try to make it useful for people. And so the intentions, the goals are a little bit different, but it's definitely more fulfilling.
Did you find it, kind of a double question, did you find it difficult to put yourself out there when you started the Church of the Eternal Logos, the channel? And has that gotten easier, or do you still sometimes get, like, I don't know what the right word would be, anxious, or do you feel pressure to present, to put your ideas out in the way you do? Because on the internet, you never know who's going to watch it. And I sometimes find a fear can be a real problem. Sometimes you have a great idea, and I'll have a great idea, and I'll think it's a great idea, and then I'll kind of be like, man, I don't know if I can, if I want to say this. It seems like sometimes, tell me if you relate to this. Sometimes I can feel like the idea is bigger than me. Like I'm not going to do it justice. And then there can be a very harsh self-criticism, and you compare yourself to all these top guys who are making incredible content, and it can be very demotivating. Do you ever struggle with that?
Yeah, the self-criticism. I feel like I do have a sense of a unique angle on topics. I do feel a pressure of depth. So my goal is I never want somebody to watch my content and think that I created a video so I can get to the super chats so that somebody can send me money. Obviously it's a business. However, my goal is to earn people's trust to the point where they see, wow, he really does put a lot of effort into these streams. They're pretty dense, and it's not a mass audience orientation. It's for again, it's really the same thing for Fractal Universe. It's what I would want. So I really make videos that if I was who I was before I started it, I would need those videos to get to the point of where I'm at now. And the expectation can be daunting. I do put that on myself, and a lot of people tell me you don't have to, do so much each time you do a stream. The idea of having a unique voice, that can be a mental struggle where you start self-criticizing and thinking that you don't have this angle. And my mind is hyperactive, so what I struggle with is not so much the confidence to go do it, but if I get one thing wrong, if I say something wrong, if I get it wrong, it replays in my mind over and over and over. I can't sleep that night. I can't think about it. I pray as God forgive me. I don't want to steer somebody wrong. And so for me, the real challenge is I hate saying something out loud in one of my streams that I really wish I could take back. And it's not necessarily, towing a line of to not be political. That I've already crossed that line enough, being just a traditional Christian. It's just like getting the theology wrong. My opinion can be wrong. That's fine. But if I misrepresent the theology in any way, I can't sleep. It bothers me. I feel like I failed. I feel like I'm leading people in the wrong direction. And so it's a double-edged sword. It's like I'm overly critical of myself, which forces me to then constantly, I would argue, make fairly deep content over and over and over. And so I feel like I'm a bit on a hamster wheel, but I love reading, and I love doing research, and I love to present ideas. So just like this dream, me rambling is not hard. I love presenting things and trying to show people with words. And I feel like that's my gift. That's what's God given me, is to educate people, to take something that I read some PhD or some scholar, and it's kind of convoluted language. And I can just, oh, look, this is what he's just saying this, and this. And I just love doing that. So I'm driven by a passion for doing it, but I am very self-critical. And sometimes it keeps me up at night if I feel like I didn't do my best job or I didn't spend enough time preparing. That's another thing. If I feel like I do a stream and it's like it's that Thursday, I got to get a stream in that day, but life has been, on the go, and I wasn't able to give the amount of time of research or time to do it, and I could have done it better. That also really, it'll keep me up at night. And so that's the double-edged sword that I deal with.
Yeah, and it's awful when you know about that mistake and then you open your comments and somebody's pointed it out. And you think, oh no, people are even noticing it. Yeah, I can relate, man. I think I often there's that expression, don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. Yeah. And sometimes I really want it to be perfect, and then I end up never releasing it, or I end up delaying. And then when I release it, I'm kind of unhappy about it. And it's weird, as my most viewed video on my channel is my least favorite video. I made it without a script. I literally picked up a microphone and just started rambling about a movie, and I got the movie wrong. Like my reading of the movie is just wrong. It's I was incorrect, and yet it's like got over 1 million views. And
dang, I didn't realize that.
Wow. Yeah, it's basically it's one of my oldest videos. It's 6 years. I think it's 6 years old. It's on my channel. If you scroll the videos at the bottom, you'll find it. And it's about that movie Whiplash. I don't know if you've seen that movie with the drummer. It's a really good movie. And it's just about this abusive drum teacher and a drummer, and this guy wants to be one of the best. And this drum teacher is, one of the lines in the movie is he basically says the two most damaging words in the English language are "well done." Or no, not well done, or good job. Because if somebody just tells you good job, you'll never be great. You'll never grow. And so anyway, in the movie, there's this scene where the guy gets given a folder and he's told, don't lose this folder. And then it mysteriously goes missing. And the consequences of that folder going missing affect the whole film. But I watched the movie probably the second time, and I remember thinking, who took the folder? Like, where did the folder go? The movie never reveals it. But then I thought there were clues that the movie reveals who took it. So I made a video exploring a theory, which I think is wrong, explaining why and who I think took the folder. And it's a terrible video because I literally recapped the whole movie after saying there's spoilers. So I was like, okay, if you haven't seen the movie yet, there are spoilers. So assuming you're still watching it, that means you have seen the movie. But then I go into a summary of the whole movie for people that have seen the movie. And that's like 7 minutes of the video. And then only do I get to the point. And it's like 2 minutes. And then it's just terrible because I rambled it. And I never thought it would get any views. And turns out that a lot of people have that same question. So they go onto Google and they type Whiplash, who took the folder? And what would you know? My video is the first thing that pops up. So I actually think it's past 2 million now. I don't want to lie. But it's my most popular video. And Warner Brothers had it monetized for forever. So they were taking all that revenue. I didn't make any money off of it until like 2 weeks ago when I finally built up the courage to dispute it. And so I earn the royalties now from that freaking curse of a video on my channel. Let me quickly see if I can.
Yeah, I just looked. It's 1.9 million.
1.9 million. Okay, yeah, cool. So it's almost at 2 million. Yeah, so that video is like my least favorite. And what's happened now on the channel is there's a lot of people that subscribe for that kind of content. But Dylan 6 years ago is a very different. That's weird talking about myself in the third person. But who I was 6 years ago is a very different person to who I am now. 6 years ago, the channel wasn't even called Existential Delight. It was just me making very cringy blogs and vlogs about stuff I didn't understand. And then my love for philosophy kind of blossomed like 5 or 4 years ago. And then that started slowly seeping into the channel. And I think your business is an extension of you. So you will see elements of yourself in your business. And if you don't accept that and embrace that, and you try and maintain this kind of unhealthy symbiotic relationship with your channel, which your channel is like a cancer. It's like completely the opposite of what you believe now. I know you'll really relate to this because of Fractal Universe. It just, you start to feel like a hypocrite. In and out. And so it took me
it becomes a weight as opposed to an outlet.
Exactly. And and so now, I've kind of got the opposite problem to you, is like I have like 20,000 subscribers, but I get very few views. And there are guys who love my channel and who comment regularly, and I get emails from people, but it's the vast majority of people are waiting for me to do a song analysis or a movie analysis. And that's unfortunately just the price I have to pay for having switched. But every day, people that don't like the Christian view leave, and people who do like it join.
Right.
So it's a natural growth that has to happen.
Yep.
And so you're going to go through kind of trenches at certain points where things don't seem to be growing. But actually, what's the reason that the balance is kind of stable is because people that really love your content are staying, people that don't are falling away, and then you've got new people coming in, and they're kind of in that limbo, that purgatory, where they haven't really decided if they're going to be committed. And the people that are committed really are committed, and they stay. And that audience takes a long time to build up.
Yes.
And you're way closer to that than I feel I am, and that's a good thing. So that's why when we were messaging, and you were talking about like your channel and the growth, I just see your channel to me as like timbers and embers and like firelighters, and everything is just building up, and one day it's just going to completely explode, and it's going to get really, really big, because you'll have a big following of people that are all commenting and all engaged. And as I understand it, that is much better for a channel than if you upload 1,000 videos and you get 5 views on 1,000, it's worthless. But if you upload,
even if you have 1 million subscribers,
even if you have 1 million, but if you upload 10 videos and each video gets like 5,000, 6,000 views and lots of comments, that's way better for you.
Yeah.
And it just takes time and patience, and there's an element of having the patience, and now and then you're gonna get a video that's gonna go a little bit better. So like I did my interview with Peugeot, and that did really well. And then that introduces his audience to your audience, right? So then you've got more people that come in from there. You're going to get that as well. And every time we do one of these streams, there's new members of your audience that are going to find my channel, and new members of my audience that are going to find yours. So there is also an element of like helping each other that I really believe in. It's not a zero-sum game. If you grow in the Christian podcast sphere, that's good for all Christian podcasts.
Yep.
It's good for everybody. And the spirit of charity should be on Christian YouTube more than anywhere else, really. It's like the source of it, And sometimes we can, sometimes we can forget that. It's not a competition. We're all should be lifting each other up. So yeah, those are just some thoughts, man.
Right. That's absolutely right. And for me, I've accepted, so from Church of the Eternal Logos, from the onset, I knew I was going to play the long game. So it was a 5-year goal from the onset of building a niche audience, because I knew that's what it was going to be. And so, as opposed to Fractal Universe, which was all about how many views can I get, how many subscribers can I get, which it did exactly the exponential growth. Church of the Eternal Logos has not been exponential; it's been very linear. And so for me, working out and streaming are like two sides of the same coin for me, because it's a process, it's a lifestyle, and it's a long-term goal. It's not, it's not like, oh, I just need to get in shape for this summer. No, this summer, next winter, it's all going to be the same thing. And same thing with the streaming. It's like, for me, just keep going, doing it. Another stream, another book, another argument. And so, like you said, you pretty soon your channel, you're going to see the exact same thing. It's just consistency, doing it over and over and over again. And that's our life. That's our relationship with Christ. It's not an exponential growth.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
It's a linear growth, hopefully, if you're doing it right, because we also regress.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like, I'm just playing the long-term game. My goal isn't even to have 1 million subscribers on YouTube. My goal is to gain the trust of the people who watch my content, whether the stream gets 1,000 views or 5,000 views. Every stream, I want, if somebody to watch it, that they trust that I'm doing it for the right reasons, And so when I'm married and in 5 years from now and 10 years from now, I can continue to do it. And whether I'm on YouTube or kicked off YouTube or wherever I am to still do what I'm doing, the people trust me so much that they'll support me. And then that's the only, then it's like the tenured position at the university. They can't fire me. They can't take away my paycheck because the people who watch my stuff support me, and that's how I live. And so that's the goal for me. It's just to earn the trust of people and just keep going. So for me, it's a long-term game that no matter what happens, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, man. I enjoy your streams a lot. And you have I don't know how you do it, man. You mentioned your mind is like hyperactive. I think that maybe explains it, because you seem to be able to garner so much research so quickly, and then to present it in a stream and to do it live as well. Given what you said about how you have this fear of, like getting theology wrong, like getting maybe a core doctrine somehow,
just articulating it wrong. This happened the other day that bothered me. A guy came on, we were talking about, I was trying to explain how Christ collapsed the dichotomy between the temporal and the eternal. And so the second person of the Trinity is an eternal person. But I was trying to talk about him taking on human nature within that eternal person happened within space and time. And so it was a historical event. It was, Christ, the Logos didn't always have humanity. That's what I was trying to articulate. And so the way I tried to express it, he kept thinking I was saying that Jesus Christ is not an eternal person. And no, he is an eternal person, but his human nature is not eternal. But it is now that he's ascended. And so he was misunderstanding. And I was like, oh, it bothered me. Like I could hardly sleep, because I'm like, I'm not saying Jesus Christ isn't eternal, but his human nature happened as a historical event to unify these things. And so it's like something so minor like that will keep me up. And it's not that probably people who watch that, nobody even really like notices it. They're like, oh, maybe, oh yeah, he kind of stumbled or trying to explain that, but I get what he's saying. But me, it's like, I feel like I almost failed. I almost led somebody in the wrong way, or made them think that the second person was like, he only became the second person in history or something like that. Not that I did say that, but it bothers me that way. So
well, let me be totally vulnerable and totally honest. Every time I talk about the Trinity, I'm scared I'm going to utter heresy accidentally. I'm worried I'm going to just say a heresy without realizing it, and of course, not intentionally. It's more like, you'll try, because it's so difficult to describe. It's so tricky to catch all the various elements in one net. And unless you understand it so well, and you're so good at communicating, and at that exact moment you can think on the right spot and still have it make sense to the other person. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. So for someone like me who has an above average, but I would not say expert understanding of the Trinity, I go into it. I even said when I spoke to Paul Vanderklay on the channel, I said to him, I'm going to try and describe this now, but if I wander into heresy, you got to tell me, because I'm not trying to do that, but it can happen. And the Trinity is just one example, right? So I can relate, man, because you don't want to build a reputation of like being the guy who doesn't really know his stuff. And then it's, but I think the best thing to do is actually just to admit it to people, and just to say, hey, the last stream I said this, and actually it was a mistake. What are you going to do? Right. And life goes on.
And that's actually then a useful element for other people watching, because again, it gets back to the humility. Because it's so easy to be prideful. And, no, I wasn't wrong. He didn't understand what I was saying. It's like, well, if I said it wrong, I apologize. Like that's not what I meant to do. That's not what. So I absolutely agree. And that's where, again, just praying, and then just knowing that God forgives you for it. It is what it is. Right now, you're talking about how fast I go through books. I read about 1 to 2 books a week. So that's my job.
That's good.
So if you work a 9 to 5, you can't do that. That'd be unfeasible. But for me, I can allocate 4 to 5 hours just to reading, get caffeinated. I don't get up except to use the restroom, and I just read, and I get my mind is able to get lost in the entire book of whatever it is. In the last 2 weeks, I've got through 3 books. And so I'm trying to finish one up. Well, I'll be presenting one book tomorrow on Sunday night. Well, whenever you upload this, but this is on a Saturday. So tomorrow I'll be, somebody paid for me to do a stream on one book. And then there's another book that I just started 2 days ago that I'm halfway through. So I expect to finish that the next day or two. And so, but that's just what I do, and I love it. And so that's why the channel, just trying to create the opportunity to get paid to create a revenue stream doing what I love to do. And that's what I love to do. I love to read books, understand what somebody's saying, and then try to break it down and articulate it to somebody else who, that way, like, again, my friend Jay Dyer, he says, we do the homework for people so they don't have to, is basically what we do.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. That's I have to say that is your niche, and you do it well, and you're only going to benefit from embracing that. You obviously know, like, I have a lot of love for G.K. Chesterton, and I'd read a poem by him, or I'd read a chapter, and I'd be like, man, this would make such a great video. And then I would think, but I uploaded Chesterton last week. I don't want to make another Chesterton. And then I just one day kind of went, you know what? That's my niche. Like, what?
My advice to you, how I do streams: if it moves you, if it excites you to make it, do it. That's it, because that's what's going to drive you to actually follow through on continuing to make content. Yeah. So if I only did streams based on what I thought people would be popular, I wouldn't have the same drive to create content. Now, at the same time, I do have to think about what would be more popular, because not everything that I want to do is super popular. And so, but generally speaking, my advice would, if you read a Chesterton thing and it's a poem or something, like, oh my gosh, this would be perfect, do it. Do it. Always make time for the things that excite you. Do those things, and you're going to see a pattern emerge. There's going to be this ripple effect, and you're just going to follow through with it. And then maybe, you do 10, 15 Chesterton from this point forward. You're like, okay, now I'm reading something else, or something else excites you. And that's also how I do stream topics. It's like, I'll sit and think, what excites me? What would I want to learn? Okay, how did the Ottomans take over Anatolia? And so then I'll just dive into watching videos, learning, finding out historical figures. And it's just constantly then me figuring out, like, and that's where I pray that God leads me through the excitement, through the Spirit. So that, what do I need to learn about next? What should I do a stream on next? Which topic do I need to dive into next?
Yeah, lovely, man. And it's like, you don't want to limit yourself. You don't want to say this is the only thing I'm going to do. But I must say, I found it very, like, freeing, because I recently changed the kind of goal of the channel. Now, the goal is always to be the opposite of an existential crisis. So ideally, if you watch one of my videos, I want you to feel better about the mystery of life, not worse. But sometimes I talk about pretty sad topics. But I kind of just changed a lot of that direction to just exposing the viewer to Chesterton. And that's what I love. And
that's great.
I've noticed growth since doing that, because that is just where my passion lies. And I can't have a conversation with someone without bringing him up. So it's just taking his thoughts and ideas and applying them to the modern world. So I remember Italy recently got a new prime minister, this lady, Giorgia Moroni, or I think that's her name. And there was a lot of things in the media about her being right-wing. But besides all that, regardless of what people think, she quoted Chesterton in her speech. And there were all these articles that came out about how what it means that she quoted Chesterton. And I read them, and I was like, this is such terrible journalism. And I just at the time, it's kind of past. It's long gone now. But looking back at that, I was thinking, man, that's the kind of stuff I can comment on with a little bit more authority.
Absolutely,
you know what I mean?
Dude. Absolutely.
Like, so that's a new direction for the channel. But it's freeing when you find your niche and you embrace it, because there are no other South Africans talking about G.K. Chesterton on YouTube.
There's not that many channels talking about G.K. Chesterton over and over. Yeah, you find, summaries of the book Orthodoxy or something. Yeah, there's probably multiple people that have done that. But even if that's what excites you, and GK Chesterton, like his stuff, what I love is the paradox. We did a stream on the paradoxical stuff that I love that. It tickles the intellectual curiosity that I love. That's why I like reading. Dude, do it. Do it, because it's gonna, if you're excited about it, you're gonna do it better. And it's good. Other people are also gonna be excited about it. And if you feel like it's worth sharing, it is worth sharing. And so just keep doing it. And maybe, you feel like, okay, I've done enough Chesterton, I'm moving on to something else. Or now you feel like you can start talking, or you have such a grasp on all his ideas that they kind of become your ideas. And so that lens is now a lens in which you can talk about other things. So it's all a journey, it's all a process. And that's where I think finding your leading edge, that's how I look at it, is like, what is the leading edge of my life? Not something that I've already done or going back. So now I'm not on the leading edge anymore, but that razor edge that is like right on the frontier of my existence. And it's going to be tied to what really excites you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of thinking about it, man. I didn't think, because it's so easy to fall back into what did work for you, and the approaches that you did like, or who you were like 5 months ago. But you don't want to be there. You want to be at the pinnacle of where you are right now, right? You want to be at the top. If you're going to be on any hierarchy, at least be on the top of, your interests. So yeah, thanks for that advice, man. I appreciate that. I wasn't even looking for advice, but that's useful, and I feel like I've got like so much content to make. But the channel has picked up a lot in terms of like the amount of content, because even these interviews now, like I'll clip them and I'll share clips, which is a kind of standard format and a standard formula, but it works, and I actually think it does add value to people, because not everybody wants to sit and watch, immediately a 2.5 hour stream.
That's the ball game I'm trying to get into now. So this evening I planned on throwing a clip up from one of my streams. And that's what my goal is now. I basically, from 2021, the beginning of 2021, well, maybe midway through 2020, I forget when I started actually live streaming, because I would just record videos and then upload. Once I started live streaming, now I always started live streaming because I like getting caught in the spirit and like just kind of what I call freestyling, whatever the topic is, because I just like bombarding myself with information, so then I can then almost perform it for people. And oh, I lost my train of thought. We were talking about live streaming.
The clip.
Making clips. So I made three videos a week. I did that on Fractal Universe. That was my schedule. 3 videos a week for Fractal Universe. When I started Church of the Eternal Logos, it was 3 videos a week, which were recorded. They're about 20 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. And then once I started live streaming, it was 3 live streams a week. And that was a lot more effort to do, but I did it. And now I'm doing 2 live streams a week and 2 clips a week. And so I have so many. For 2 years, I've done 3 streams a week, basically 2 to 3 streams a week. So now I have so many streams that are basically all an hour and a half to 3 hours. I just go through and I just will clip 10 to 20 minutes. And I just started. Everybody's asking me, "Oh, do you got clip videos?" I shared your stream with my friends, but they can't sit through 2 hours. And at the same time, I love the long streams, because it's for what type of content would I want to consume. Well, I like long form content that's really in depth. That's what I like. So I basically created what I like for 2.5 years. Now I'm going to create clip videos, and I've seen you've been doing shorts. I got to start creating shorts on YouTube. YouTube, the algorithm, basically that's what it promotes. If you want to grow your channel, you have to get in the game of YouTube shorts now. Instagram Reels, the same thing. If you want to grow your Instagram channel, you have to get into the game of Reels. And it's actually, some of the articles I looked at, it's kind of nefarious, because it's the Reels, these minute-long videos, that's actually affecting people's attention span, which is why that's why TikTok's structured that way. And so then YouTube and Instagram is moving into the same pattern, because it's easy, quick content, but it's also affecting the ability for people to pay attention for long periods of time. And that's why we're becoming more and more impulsive in these shorts. Creating minute-long, minute-and-a-half clips over and over is doing that. But that's the name of the game. And so my game is 2-hour long streams, but now I got to get into the clipping and the short stuff. But I got enough content do that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm kind of rambling there, but
you have a gold mine of content to go back into, and just, I mean, you could actually, I wonder, you could probably just not make any videos and just start working your way through your backlogs and just release clips and shorts, and you'd have enough videos for a long time just based on the amount of streams you've done. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm saying you have so much content sitting there that even if you stopped uploading videos, new videos, you could just keep uploading indefinitely for a long time. Well, not indefinitely, but you could keep uploading for a long time. And that's also why I love these podcasts, man, because it's like this is all kind of behind the scenes conversation, I guess, which is what I wanted to ask you about, because I don't think people would find this interesting, but it's like you said, I find this interesting, so maybe some people will. But the fact that you can have one video which takes up an X amount of time, and then you can, that one video has a lot of leverage to it, because you can then clip that and share those videos as well, which is beneficial to your subscribers because they get something specific that they want or that they're interested in. They might not want to watch or skip through to a specific point in the video. And then you're also getting, let's be honest, you're getting ad revenue on the shorts and on the clips. And now, I don't know if you saw, but YouTube is now also paying for shorts. There's like a new sort of ad revenue for shorts.
I haven't made a short yet, but that's next week. I'll probably throw on my first one.
I can pump out a short in like 15 minutes now.
Oh wow!
Because I've set up my editing software so that because you're using a specific cropping size, right? And then it can only be a minute long. You can't spend that much time editing it. But what it teaches you is really how to boil things down to the essentials. Because you'll boil it down to everything you think is important, and it's like 2 minutes. And you're like, oh man,
dude, you're telling me I try to boil it down to what I think important is 2 hours. I'm terrible at that. So even my clip videos, like I put up one clip video a couple days ago, and I was like, okay, I'll make it like 12 minutes. I got to 12 minutes. I was like, oh, but the point after, like the point I make here goes with this. Is 25-minute clip video. It's like, but it's the only way I felt like I wanted all that to be out there. So again, if they share it, I want that the person who watches, I want their train of thought to go through the different gateways I'm trying to lead them through.
Yeah, and you think I think in the same way, but like I work in corporate training, so I teach for a living and also present for a living. And if this is the way I think of ideas, like here's the conclusion, and here's the point I want you to grasp, but you're not going to appreciate this point unless I give you a few examples and a few pieces of context, and I visually in my mind see the structure of the ideas leading to the point. And a lot of people you speak to, I'm sure you've had this experience, a lot of people you speak to, they don't let you get here if it's a casual conversation. That's why streams are like a guilty pleasure and videos are a guilty pleasure. Yes. You can just lay out everything, nobody interrupts you, and then eventually you can get to the point. But getting people to stay with you long enough, maintaining that interest, you mentioned attention spans, maintaining that interest long enough that people get to that end, that's the fun of it. That's the challenge. Like making the ideas compelling enough that they satisfy in a satisfying way, they fit on top of each other, and then when the final conclusion is revealed, it just stuns you. I actually think Chesterton was a master of this.
I agree. I mean, just read his stuff. It's
completely, man. The end of every chapter is like the conclusion of some books. Like every chapter ends with this idea that just so, I'll give you like a 3-sentence one where he basically says, we talked about this in long ago, but the sun is above us and we can't really look at it, and it's kind of murky if you try and look at it, and it can blind you. And yet it's that murky mystery that illuminates the whole world, and we can see everything by the sun. The moon, in contrast, you can look directly at it, but it's not fresh moonlight. It's only dead sunlight that you're seeing. And the moon is crisp and clear and direct. He then draws a comparison between the crisp clearness of the moon and the intellect, and that reason, that kind of divorced from God, satanic reason, divorced of mystery, Reason is the only thing you have left, making you
Right.
go insane. And he
Right.
draws a comparison between the sun and the mystery of life. And then he ends the chapter by saying, and that's why the moon lightens the night, and she's given every lunatic her name.
Oh, wow.
The word lunatic is related to
Yeah.
Luna, and and then he finishes it with that, and it just wraps everything up, and you think, whoa, and you have to go back and read it. And he was just a master at that. Like,
I love that.
I just can't write. I can't write like that. I don't know. And it's so different because he doesn't argue academically. He doesn't kind of make points all the time. He jumps everywhere and he hits you with, all these ideas. And at the end, he just brings it all together. And you go, how did he do this? And that's why I'm doing that orthodoxy series, right? Where I'm literally reading every word and explaining every sentence as I understand it, because I want to know, I want to understand it. And people love that because it's like,
absolutely, dude.
It's gonna be so hard to read unless you map it out and literally read line by line and like try and find connections. You'll read right over it. It's like the equivalent of things just going over your head, except you'll just miss it if you don't give it the attention it deserves.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah. No, I think that's great, man. Keep doing what you're doing and keep making GK Chesterton content. And don't try to, have a singular brand that, limits what you can do. It's your journey, and you're expressing what is, your live edge, and find that live edge and write it.
Yeah.
And you're going to make better content from it. And people are going to be able to then jump on your live edge, and it's going to be their live edge too.
Yeah. Very inspiring, man. Thanks for that. I actually think we could probably end things there. I have maybe just one last question for you.
Sure.
That is, you mentioned, you're obviously reading a lot of books. What's a book you've sort of recently read that you really fell in love with?
Well, that's a tricky question because I read a lot of stuff on transhumanism right now. So it's a lot of stuff that
not things to fall in love with.
Yeah, it's for me, it's useful because I can articulate the ideas better or things like that. However, it's not it's not spiritually edifying. Maybe one that I would put forth is there's a book by a Marxist scholar named David Noble, and it's called The Religion of Technology. And what he argues is that, and I was bringing up aspects of his argument at the beginning of the stream, is now he is a Marxist scholar, and so he's using a dialectical or an Hegelian dialectical framework. That's his approach towards the topic, right? So there's going to be an oppressor and an oppressed. And he's arguing that a philosophy theology got developed within Western Christianity. Like I said, reinterpreted Adam, re-understood the New Jerusalem, and saw technology as an extension of ourselves. And that this moved through Giacomo Fiore is a gentleman within the Catholic tradition. Now, most people don't believe him to be a prophet. However, there were people who believed him to be a prophet, and he talked about moving through these ages and how technology was going to bring us back to the Garden of Eden. So we fall, but then through technology, we get redeemed. We move back. And so it moves through him, through Roger Bacon, and he wrote a book called The New Atlantis, where he's talking about how America is going to be the new Atlantis. And again, it's about a sort of technocracy. The technology is going to elevate our understanding, sort of central world government theme. So all this stuff gets going. So David Noble makes this argument that I think is very interesting. Now, he is obviously anti-Christian in the way that he's framing it, because he's making, in my argument, certainly not sophisticated theological nuances of Christianity, but the people he's highlighting are absolutely true. And so, and then looking into the Western esoteric tradition. So as the Renaissance, because Giacomo Fiore's Middle Ages, as the Renaissance and Hermeticism got translated into Latin, this created, the magical century that we know as the 16th century, the same century that the Protestant Reformation comes from. But because the Protestant Reformation it has no sacramental reality, unlike Catholicism and Orthodoxy, it in a way is an ideology, right? Because the Eucharist is just a symbol. Now, Luther would think that's terrible, but that's how it sort of got developed. And if you ask most Protestants, they might do it once every 1 month or 2 months because it's just a symbol. But he highlights how this spirit got related to people in regards to Werner von Braun, the Nazi scientist that was a huge catalyst for the NASA program, how he became a born-again evangelical Christian, and that he believed, exploring space and all this stuff had to do with, again, the New Jerusalem. And so that book, The Religion of Technology, is highlighting what he's arguing is that this strand within Christianity that reinterprets the timeline is the catalyst for, in a way, the civilization that we live in now. Now, as a Christian, anybody who is a Christian would read that and they would say, you disagree with a lot of things he's saying, but that's not why I think the book is great. I think as he's highlighting something that actually I think is historically true. Now, then he gets into how technology is like misogynist and all this stuff, which is ridiculous because women also talk about how technology is the empowerment of the female. And people like Marshall McLuhan would talk about how the digital technologies feminize us and bring us back to a tribal setting, the sort of goddess worshiping culture. So I think he's wrong on certain things, but it's a really good academic book highlighting this theological spirit that got developed, that we're going to sort of redeem the world through our technology and through this existential pursuit. And that's why I think the Antichrist system, which I believe that is part of, and I think that's where he's, not that he would say that, but as a Christian, that's why I think he's accurately highlighting is this sort of prideful spirit that got, sort of embraced within Christianity, aspects of it that leads to the Enlightenment, that leads to the founding fathers. He talks about Benjamin Franklin, which he was participating in a lot of esoteric societies, the Freemasonry, the Rosicrucians, all that stuff's brought up. So the magic is brought up. So he's not a religion scholar highlighting that these are actually different paradigms, different worldviews. They're not all one thing. He kind of makes them all one thing, but it's a great book to see this timeline and how it leads into the 21st century, because that thing was published in 1999.
Wow. What was it called again?
The Religion of Technology.
The Religion of Technology. Okay.
By David Noble. Yeah.
David Noble. I'll put an image on the screen when I put this together, and also probably, well, I will go check it out. I'll probably put a link in the chat if anybody wants
to. So
as
Christians, there'd be things that we would say, "Oh, dude, you're getting that wrong. Like that's not." But as a Marxist, using that academic filter, that because you're putting, because that's what you do as an academic, you have to have a theoretical lens. So you have a phenomenon, a topic, and then you're putting that theoretical lens onto it to see how it maps out. So he looks at this technology as always being tied to a sort of Christian, he argues, a Christian existential sort of elite spirit, that by the more that we know about the world, the more that we understand God's creation, the more we become like God. So it's like, dude, you're talking about Gnosticism, bro. You're not, but that's not where he's accurately highlighting historical Christians that we would identify as Christians that had these ideas. Me as a religious studies scholar, I'd say, oh, bro, dude, you're getting all this wrong. Like, but it's a really interesting book. And I think it allows you to see something that a lot of us just don't see. And that's how the subtleties of the inversion of Christianity is the world that we're living in.
There's a quote attributed to Seneca where he says something like, "I'll never be ashamed to quote a man I disagree with when he says something wise." So it's that idea, like, you might disagree with 99% of something that a guy says, or even just 50% of something that he says, but he can still really illuminate you in other areas. You might disagree with his conclusions or his foundation, but there's value everywhere oh my goodness, where you are willing to look for it, you'll find value.
Absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that.
Man, thank you so much for your time. We've almost been going for 3 hours. I knew this would be a long stream. I wanted this to be long because I know you and I can really talk. So,
well, I think for what people will see, it's only been 2 hours and 11 minutes or so, because
true.
So we were catching up before the stream, but yeah, we've been chatting for actually over 3 hours. But brother, thank you so much for having me on. It's always so fun to chat with you. You know, like you said, we never know where we're going to go, but we never run out of topics to talk about, and so it's always good.
We don't. We probably could keep going, but it's late here in Africa.
Yeah, I bet.